Hello, this is the Porgcorner with your hosts Mark and Steven. We talk comics, film, books, television, science, aliens, and gaming. We come from different nerd jokes. Steven lives and breathes Star Wars, and I'm a Superman and DC fanatic. We also touch on the Marvel Universe and other sci-fi and fantasy franchises. Now, let's get to episode 7, our Captain Marvel review. Captain Marvel takes place in the 90s. Brie Larson plays Carol Danvers, a character that's on the Kree homeworld and has no recollection of her past. So who are the Kree? The Kree are an alien race that's at constant war with the Skrulls, who are shapeshifters. Shapeshifters that can take the form of any human, any alien. Eventually, Captain Marvel gets skyrocketed to Earth, where the main story begins. Captain Marvel's arc in the film is to discover who she was on Earth before getting amnesia, basically losing her memory. About all she knows of herself on Earth is that she is some sort of pilot. So she gets like flashback images. So really the whole film is about her rediscovering herself and who she is. So, general opinions of the film, Steven, what did you think overall of this?
So, when we left the movie, I was pretty amped. I was pretty excited. We had a good time. It was an adventure. You know, I was just real happy to be back into a superhero movie. You know,
right.
Something, fighting scenes, this and that. And then I went home and I had time to think about it, and I started losing interest in it the more I thought about it. I was like,
okay.
Wow. I mean, it was an adventure, and I'm glad I went, but I mean, I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy it after this. It didn't have that appeal that I was looking for. It didn't have the strength of Wonder Woman.
Right.
You know, I don't know. That one just really, really stood out. Yeah. And I know that's what they were trying to do with this one. Marvel was trying to introduce, a female lead, to give us that female lead movie.
Yeah. There's no secret about that.
There's
they were heavily marketing that.
Exactly. They were
this is our Wonder Woman.
And we have a female director. It was co-directed, and one of the directors was the female. So they're like, female director, female lead.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah, no, you're right. This was absolutely, they're trying to do Wonder Woman for Marvel. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the last things we were missing in terms of kind of expanding who gets represented in the Marvel Universe.
Right.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
I kind of had the opposite reaction than you. So we haven't, so everyone knows, we haven't actually talked about the film since we saw it about a week and a half ago or something.
Right.
So the only impression I had from Steven coming in today was, we both loved the film. We walked out of the theater and we were like, oh, wow, that was an adventure, just like you said. Yeah. So me going into Captain Marvel, seeing that film, seeing the trailers, I should say, I was not amped about it. I think I mentioned it in a past episode. Mm-hmm. I thought the trailers were flat. They did not sell the movie. I thought Brie Larson's acting in the trailers, what they showed, was not good, was kind of wooden. But I came out of this theater after seeing Captain Marvel thinking this was one of my favorite MCU films. And I'm not saying like top 5 or top 7. I'm saying like there are 20 of them, right? This is probably like 10 or 9, somewhere in there. Yeah. I really, really liked it. And we're not going to go into major spoilers with this at all. Yeah. But I will say that there are kind of revelations in this film.
Yeah.
That connect to the wider MCU. And we'll talk about the wider MCU later. But the way they handled it really spoke to me in a way. And also the 90s setting was just, I loved it. Man.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that. That was a fun adventure too. Yeah. A fun part of the adventure, I think, was going into the 90s. But I mean, the film overall, I don't think they did what they went out to do. Okay. I don't think they accomplished it. Like when my wife and I saw Wonder Woman, she left the movie and she said, "Wow, I get it now. I understand why you guys go to these superhero movies, because you walk out of there and you just feel like you're empowered and you're ready to take on the world." And she's like, after seeing Wonder Woman, I was empowered as a woman. I'm ready to go and just battle the world and say, I'm here. Yeah. And I do feel that she would not have that same impression coming out of this movie.
Yeah, there was one thing, and we'll get to kind of the relationships in the film. Mm-hmm. It's a major topic that we'll discuss. But one difference to Wonder Woman that I think maybe this did well and that film maybe didn't was something you mentioned when we were discussing off air, is that they handled the relationship among women, I think, well. and in a different way.
Right. Yeah. Well, when we get to that topic, I have a high point on that.
Right. And Wonder Woman didn't do that.
Sure.
And that film is great. It's one of my favorite comic book films, period. I think it's amazing. And this is not to that level, but they did some things in this that they did not do in Wonder Woman.
Right.
So,
agreed.
It just goes to show that the more you put, again, different voices out there, different groups out there, you're going to get more diverse experience within those groups. Even.
Yeah.
So I commend Marvel for going this route. So I like to dive into character discussions, but really what I want to just do is list the major characters in the film, and then we're going to discuss the relationships among these characters, because that's the important element. So the major characters, as I mentioned, are Brie Larson playing Captain Marvel, the title character. Sam Jackson plays a young Agent Fury, which we'll also talk about in more detail, because there's a lot.
Young Fury.
A young Fury. I think there was like a
young CGI faced Fury.
You know what it reminds me of? Is remember that show in the 90s, a cartoon? It was like young James Bond. James Bond Jr. That's what it was.
Okay.
That's exactly what I thought of when I saw him. James Bond Jr.
I guess I missed that one.
The theme song's so catchy, man. Okay, so the next character is Ben Mendelsohn, who you may know, he played the general in Star Wars Rogue One, the villain in that. He plays a Kree agent, and one thing that, I mean, I don't know how much detail we can get into it with, but he's really funny. I really like that character. It's funny throughout the film.
He's a funny character, but I have a problem with that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have the problem with that because he was the general of the Skrull. He was supposed to be this tough guy leader, and he does it really well at the beginning. And then halfway through the movie, you know, some light is shined, and suddenly he's this comedy relief to the whole movie. And I feel strongly that should have been somebody else. That should have been the other character, somebody else with him.
Yeah, I felt like I didn't even know, like, you're right, there was a big transition from how we are introduced to him to later in the film.
Right.
And because I mentioned that because I didn't even realize it was the same actor. Like, that's... Remember, like, this is not a spoiler, the Skrulls are shapeshifters. So we see Ben Mendelsohn in one form, and we also see him in another form.
As a Skrull and as a human.
Right. But there's a big tonal shift in his character. I enjoyed it, but it looks like it was kind of jarring for me. So...
Yeah. I mean, I understood that it was him.
Yeah.
I understood that it was still him as a Skrull, but it was that midpoint when things kind of shifted, and his character suddenly no longer was a tough guy.
Yeah.
It was the comedy relief.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like the tough guy should suddenly be the comedy relief. He should either be it the whole time or just stay the tough guy.
Yeah, I'll say this. I feel like it gave his character a lot more depth than you would with a normal villain or antagonist character. Yeah. Which I really, really liked about him.
Yeah, I could see that. It kind of gave him some realism.
Yeah, he was truly a three-dimensional character.
Yeah.
Like, he had so many layers. When I came out of the theater, I wasn't thinking of his character so much. I was thinking of the other characters in the film. Right. But rethinking of it, he was kind of a highlight for me in this.
I think so. He was definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I wish that it was more consistent throughout.
Yeah.
I wish, even if he was at the beginning, when he's being a tough guy, if he like made a joke while being the tough guy, so it was kind of a consistency with him, that would have made more sense to me.
I know that I really hope he comes back in the MCU overall.
That would be cool.
Yeah. Okay, so the next character is Jude Law. He plays Jan Rog, and basically he's Captain Marvel's mentor. You've seen him in the trailers. She learns a lot of fighting skills from him and things like that. So he did a good job. I did not really expect to see Jude Law in a film like this, you know, but he did a good job with it. Yeah. Next up is Clark Gregg. He's back as Agent Coulson.
We get a Coulson origins. Like,
yeah,
how great is that?
You get young Agent Coulson.
Right.
Yeah. It was really cool to see him, and you know we'll talk about the CGI and all that, but it was cool to see him. Lashana Lynch plays Maria Rambeau. And she's a character, or her daughter is a character in the comics. I'm not very familiar with the Captain Marvel comics, but I do know that that character is important in the lore.
Rambo's in the book. Okay.
Yeah, that's in the books. And I thought she was, the actress that played her, Lashana Lynch, was really, really good. And I really liked her take. And again, we'll get to relationships in a second. Digimon Hunsu, I always mix that up, but he is in the film. He plays the same character he did in Guardians of the Galaxy. Right. Where he is kind of in those films, he's like an agent of Ronan, the Accuser. In this, he plays he plays the same character, but a different role.
Right. He's the same character.
Right.
And that's what I tried to lean over to ask you, but the movie just kept moving.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, how did he show up here when he's supposed to be in Guardians of the Galaxy over there? And then later we see Ronan. And, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. We're still in the same universe. Yep. These two, he's an actor playing the same character.
Yes. Not
an actor playing two different characters.
Exactly. And Lee Pace played Ronan again in this
Lee
film
Pace.
as well. He has a couple snippets of lines.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this takes place in the 90s, and Guardians took place in, modern times. It came out in 2014. Mm-hmm. So it goes to show that these characters go over time, go through transitions.
Right.
Because Digimon Hunsen's character is very different than what you see from him in Guardians.
Right.
So.
But you did you notice when he's piloting the ship, he almost answers Ronan? And so I was like, oh, he's got a little bit of loyalty even right then to Ronan.
Right.
Instead of following his commander's lead and not saying, the location.
That I did not notice that. Yeah. That's absolutely true.
Right.
So you see hints of things.
Uh-huh.
And that just goes to show you, by the way, like the influence of like Kevin Feige in the overarching story, those little elements that tie everything together. Mm-hmm. So
this movie was littered, just totally littered with little like Easter eggs and connections throughout the entire MCU. It was crazy. Like it's you have to see this movie, but you have to have seen some of the other ones to notice the Easter eggs.
Right. There was another reviewer that mentioned how MCU has turned into kind of episodic content, kind of like television shows, like streaming services. Uh-huh. And that's true. This film, more than any other I think I've seen in the MCU, is totally something you have to see in kind of sequence.
Yeah.
You have to have context to see it, and then it's going to provide context going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't think of any other film in the MCU quite like that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're all connected. But.
Sure.
All right, so let's talk about... So those are the major characters. Let's talk about the relationship between these characters. Let's start with Captain Marvel and Nick Fury, because I feel like they're the backbone of the film in many ways.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, without them, there's no future MCU movies, actually. Because Fury brings everyone together, but only because his relationship with Captain Marvel does he know that this needs to happen, that this type of battle and wars in the space wars are coming. Like
Star Wars.
Aliens are coming. You can't say Star Wars. It's MCU.
So one thing is, and this is a spoiler for Infinity War, but not for this film, the beeper. So at the end of Infinity War, the post-credit scene, Nick Fury clicks a button on his beeper and it calls Captain Marvel.
Right. That's the post-credit scene for Nick Fury.
Right, which most people have seen Infinity War, so they know that. Yeah. So that established the fact that they have some sort of history, and the mystery of it since Infinity War is, what is their history? Right. How does he know her? Why are they connected? Is she a friend? Is she an ally? Is she an enemy? Like, what's the deal with her? And so we had that whole mystery this entire year, and finally this film kind of answered that. Yeah. What their relationship
But I'm glad they did that post-credit scenes, because that allowed me, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that emblem. And so I looked, but I couldn't think of it on the fly, and then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, it's Captain Marvel. I was like, he just called Captain Marvel. Yeah. But we don't know anything about... Where did Captain Marvel come from in all of this? Like, we've been following the Avengers for like half a decade, more.
Yeah. It feels so random.
It's super random. Moment. Yeah.
But there was, there's so much hype with that. So, like, it's great to get basically, this is an origin story for Captain Marvel. Yeah. And it takes place 2 decades ago. Yeah.
And that's another Easter egg, honestly, is Nick Fury pulls out his beeper because he was calling for backup. Right. He used it. And when he pulled it out, I was like, that's the thing. That's the thing he had, but it's a little different. Oh, yeah. Because when he pulled it out, I was like, that's it. I've seen that.
You're totally right. So, again, I don't think this is a spoiler. It's very minor.
It's not a spoiler.
Yeah. So, basically, he has, in the 90s, remember, this takes place in the 90s, young Nick Fury pulls out a beeper to call for backup in a scene where they're being chased, essentially.
No, they were locked in the room. But
yeah. People are after them. Right. He needs backup, so he pulls out a beeper. He calls for backup. Then later they reference this in the film itself, and they make a joke out of it that Captain Marvel did some upgrades to it. Because remember, she's human, but she grew up on the Kree homeworld, essentially, or she's been on the Kree homeworld.
Yeah, she has Kree technology.
Right.
So, and she's learned from the Kree. So she modifies it with Kree technology, so it's much more advanced than a traditional beeper.
Right, and so the beeper we see in Infinity War is that beeper, as you said, just upgraded.
Yeah.
And yeah,
and she hands it to him at the end, and
Right.
that's exactly what falls on the ground at the post credits.
You're totally right. That's why MCU, man, genius.
Genius.
Genius stuff.
They're just so good at making movies.
Yeah. Is there any other element of? Well, I guess we didn't really talk about this. So their relationship is not only friends, but he kind of is a mentor in a way.
No, I would say she mentors him a little.
That's true too. It's
because he kind of comes into things a little bit overly cocky, which is Nick Fury.
Right.
Nick Fury is very cocky.
Right.
But he comes in and he's like, no, we're going to do it this way. And then, for example, he calls for backup on his beeper.
Right.
And later, she immediately takes it away from him and says, you called for help knowing full well that the Skrull can shapeshift into anybody, and you just called random people.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, she legitimately was in his face. She took it from him.
Yeah.
And didn't give it back to him until the end of the movie.
what I love about her character too is that she has that sort of that humor streak, even from the beginning when they show her in the Kree homeworld.
Yeah.
She's just a funny character. She has.
But it's like an arrogant humor.
Yes.
She's not trying to make a joke.
Right.
She's just so arrogant about something, or so she believes in herself so much that when she says it with confidence, that you're just like, oh, yeah, okay, you got me. So she burns people. She does burns. That's what
she's a roaster.
She's a roaster, right?
What I really liked about this, by the way, this take on kind of amnesia, because we see this trope in films a lot.
Yeah.
A character can't remember where they come from, and the whole arc is trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
It's common in film, but oftentimes what they do with these characters, from what I've seen, is that in other films they're kind of robotic.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't remember anything, and they're confused and robotic. They don't really have a personality until they piece everything together.
Yeah.
She, from the start, despite having amnesia, maintains her personality.
Yes, I agree with that. 100%. I'm like, because I thought that the whole time. I was like, this person doesn't know who she is, or like her origin, or what created her, or how her growing up. We all grow up, and when that's how we become who we are. We learn things from our friends, our family, and our siblings. But she retains all of that. She just cannot remember where she comes from and who she is.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
But other than that, she is totally who she is, that individual person.
And this goes into kind of our next kind of relationship discussion, which is something that I know you had some really good thoughts about off air. That's a relationship between Captain Marvel and her friend Maria Rambeau that we mentioned before. One quick thing I wanted to mention about that is there's not a lot of angst in this film, despite it being in the 90s.
A lot of what?
Angst.
Oh, angst.
Angst. Yeah. And because you don't remember a lot of things, so naturally a lot of films go to, that character's going to be angsty about it, right?
Oh, okay.
And Captain Marvel never really feels like that. And I think part of that is that relationship.
Okay.
That they talk about in the film. How that Maria Rambeau kind of grounds her in the film.
Okay.
But I don't know, what are your thoughts on their relationship overall, not just that?
So my takeaway on it was more of they did not introduce a romantic relationship. She wasn't in love with a man and couldn't remember who he was, and then their love is what brings her memory back. No, she just has this friend, this lifelong friend, and that friend has a daughter, and so they have a little family between three of them that they just she uses that as her origin. There's no romance, there's no love story to be told.
Right.
It's, I think, very unique. I think it's a fantastic way to go.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of other comic book movies that may have done something similar. I don't think any has, because even like we said, Wonder Woman. That's one of the major differences.
She has a romance. That's
one of the
part of her origin.
Yeah,
is her
key
romance.
points of that film is her romance with Steve Trevor, which was great, by the way. That's a great relationship, but this film takes a different approach.
Yeah,
and it's kind of refreshing.
Even like Black Panther has a romantic element to it,
right?
And then Captain America.
Right, that's his whole story
thing
is about Peggy and Carter.
Yeah, so it was really interesting that they did something completely different.
And what I think a lot of people hate, I certainly do, is when they shoehorn in romantic.
Yeah, they try to make it happen.
Right.
Could you imagine if they tried to put one into this?
It wouldn't.
Where would it fit?
Where would it fit?
There's not even enough time to do what they did.
There's nowhere to put it. Absolutely. You know what? The one that in the MCU that was always a problem was Thor and the human.
Yeah.
What was her name? I don't remember.
The doctor. I can't remember her name either.
But Natalie Portman. Whoever her character's name was in that. Like that always felt like a shoehorned in romantic.
It didn't need to be there. I didn't think so.
Bingo. So
it wasn't important.
Yeah.
If they wanted to put I was just thinking off the cuff. If they wanted to put a romantic element into this, it would have had to have been with Jude Law's character.
Yeah,
that's like
true.
That's the break.
Yeah.
Something happens, and so that sets off.
The mentor-mentee relationship that evolves
turns into
a
love relationship,
and that's pretty common.
Yeah. But I think it's stronger that they didn't.
Yeah, I think that would have been lazy if they had done that.
Oh, sure.
Like you would see that coming a mile away, and it wouldn't have been as interesting. Right. So what they did was really, really good. Yeah. All right, the relationship between. Let's talk about going back to Ben Mendelsohn's character for a second, because remember he's the antagonist in this film. Yeah. But he does have a connection or a relationship that develops with the protagonists. Yeah. Both Nick Fury and Brie Larson. What did you think of their kind of back and forth? Although they had the humor element, but I don't know. Do you think that the antagonist-protagonist dynamic worked in this overall?
I think so. I think it was part of the adventure. Yeah. It was who's making the right choice, who's doing the right thing. Right. And I think that really helps tell the story. The part of that telling the story is because of how independent she is. Mm-hmm. And how her character is always so kind of confident in herself. I think that's when their relationship changes. Right. Is important to who Captain Marvel is, and also who Nick Fury is too. Mm-hmm. Like the evolution of the protagonist antagonist relationship in this film is really interesting because it affects both of the Captain Marvel's protagonist, but Nick Fury and Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. Like it has a profound effect on both of them, and that leads into their characters, at least Nick Fury we know, going forward. Right. Yeah. It's like a key thing. Yeah. So they handle that really, really well. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. We have Clark Gregg's Agent Coulson touched on his relationship with Nick Fury. Now that is kind of a mentor-mentee relationship that develops, that we see hints of, at least. Because Agent Fury is young in this, but Coulson is really green. Yeah. He's just coming into this. Right. Yeah. Even though Fury's young, he has a history. And he actually lists off his military background and his spy era and all that. So he's got a background. And I think Agent Coulson does not. I feel like he's like an academic, like a student, and then became an agent. Yeah. School, qualified, passed. Now he's an agent. One thing I really liked about Agent Coulson, to go off of that, the academic idea, is I haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. No, I honestly haven't watched any TV show, whether it's Marvel or DC. I just don't have the time to sit down and watch all the TV show episodes. Right, and there are like 6 seasons at this point. Yeah. So he feels like a blank slate as well, and I feel like after this film, I kind of want to know more about his history. Yeah. I'm not saying make a whole movie out of that. I don't think he can hold up a movie. But if they keep doing origin movies and he keeps reappearing in them as like, helping or providing service, being that element. That he initially was in MCU. Like, I missed that. Remember in the first phase, he was in all of those after credit scenes. Yeah. As Nick Fury's number 2. I want to see kind of him back in that role. Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about the technical aspect of things. In previous episodes, we talked about how you're really into looking at the technical aspects of filmmaking. What did you think of the CGI? If you have thoughts on sound or any of those technical things. Okay, so this movie nailed it, in my opinion, in a lot of areas. And maybe it's because of the story they were telling or the time period they were telling it in. Mm-hmm. But the CGI is limited, which I love because I don't want too much. Mm-hmm. Clearly, outer space battles have to be CGI, glowing hands, things like that. Do they? It's all CGI. But where they really nailed it, and you even said it in the movie, Nick Fury is in a police chase trying to follow Captain Marvel in his 1991, cruiser. Right. And there's like a legitimate 1990s movie, TV series style police chase. You're absolutely right. And like the camera, it looks exactly like it. Like it's filmed exactly like it. The car kind of, pegs another car, but the front quarter's all crushed, but it's still drivable. And, it's just so awesome. I love that part. It reminded me of sort of like those like cheesy mid-90s TV shows like Texas Ranger. Right, like Chips. Yeah, exactly. Like a Chips police chase. It was great. It was really good. You know what? Sorry, but like it also reminded me of French Connection. Have you seen that one? I think so. Yeah. So that has Gene Hackman, and it's a famous car chase where they're chasing some enemies in a car under a train.
in New York.
Yeah. I do know what you're talking about. I have seen that. Yeah. It's exactly what it is.
They totally.
It's just square body cars and the camera's on one. It's just a camera on a car. It's not a drone flying around. It wasn't like a rig setup. It was just a camera on a car watching Nick Fury drive down the road and have a car accident but keep going and things being thrown at them.
That was great practical effect.
It was awesome.
It was very well done.
And then another element that I told you about later. There's a part of the movie where Captain Marvel is inside of a stairwell. She clears a hallway. Nobody's there now, and so she kind of like mysteriously walking through the corridors trying to find where she's trying to go. Right. And they literally play the Terminator music. Dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. And she comes around a corner and she just looks at us like Terminator and then walks off. And I was like,
totally missed that. Yeah, I remember you talking about it, but I missed that entirely when it happened.
I loved it so much. I was like, oh my god, the 90s. Yes.
And remember, there's also another Schwarzenegger reference in that, which we were talking about earlier. So when she comes to Earth, she lands in a blockbuster.
90s?
Right, totally 90s. I think that's in the trailer. She just goes straight into it. And at one point, remember, she is an enemy of the Skrulls. So she turns around because she gets surprised by like a poster board.
There was a sound, some alarm or something goes off. So she flips around and there's a poster cut out of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And she lights up the face, wow! She lights it up,
and it's from True Lies.
And it's from True Lies. And I even told you before she turned around, I go, look, True Lies.
Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, there it is. What a great film! So 90s. But yeah, they really jam-packed it. I think they played some grunge in it.
They played a lot of great music.
They did.
They had like Nirvana playing. Oh my gosh, they did so good.
They had the whole grunge look as well that she dresses up in.
Yeah, she takes the clothes from the mannequin and she's wearing the leather jacket with the flannel around her hips and everything and the baseball cap.
It was like, this is now the time for people in our generation to like geek out over like references like that. Because like we've had so many 80s references.
You freaked out when she's at the payphone and there's the Smashing Pumpkins posters like plastered on the wall.
The Melancholia album cover art. And I was like, yeah, the 80s people had their stuff. Now it's like, oh, we're getting like 90s retro stuff.
It was awesome references.
Yeah, they did a good job with that. Yeah. And one other thing to kind of go back to the whole chase scene. They do a lot of close-ups, and I mentioned this to you before off air. They do a lot of close-ups of Nick Fury, of Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
And the CGI, the de-aging technology, has come a long way in even a couple of years that they've been doing it. Mm-hmm. I think it might be the best I've seen.
Definitely.
Ever.
They did a really good job. You don't really notice it at all.
The de-aging technology was really good and really well handled for Nick Fury, and also Agent Coulson, Clark Gregg.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even notice his, honestly.
Yeah.
I only slightly noticed Samuel L. Jackson's a little bit. Mostly, I would assume because he's on air so much, or on the screen so much.
Yeah.
So you have an opportunity to kind of see a little bit of it.
Yeah. There's just a confidence that's growing, I think, in the technology and the industry overall, in terms of, okay, most of this movie takes place in the daytime. There's no, midnight
it's
shots.
Not dark and mysterious.
To obscure what the CGI looks like.
Sure.
There's a lot of slow-paced action. It's not fast and all that. But there's that too. So they have a variety of kind of scenes of him close up where the CGI could look spotty, but they did a damn good job with it.
Yeah, they did a good job.
It's getting a lot better.
Yeah.
Were there any other technical aspects of the film that you wanted? Oh, you know what? Actually, the space battle. At the very end, there's a space battle. It's hinted at in the trailers.
Sure.
And Captain Marvel is, I think that's where the CGI looks a little bit weak. It's not the best I've seen.
It looks like CGI.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
And it has to.
But it has to. I mean, there's no way around it. There's a spaceship. There's Captain Marvel in space. She's flying around and she's glowing. So like, all the elements have to come together in a perfect CGI moment.
So. I'm glad you mentioned it, the glowing thing. That's my problem with it. So I had this problem with Doomsday and Batman vs. Superman as well, where you had electric stuff going on when he evolved. I don't like the glowing things, and I think it's a waste of CGI resources when you have all that, because it looks kind of cheap. At this point in the technology, if she had a little bit of glow or something, or a little bit of flare, but not too much, it would have looked a lot better, because it obscures the action, I think. But,
see, I don't agree with that. I think that the glow that's around her... Because it's not supposed to be, like, real fire, and it's not supposed to be something tangible. I think it's just supposed to be an untangible thing, something we're just seeing because we can't feel it with her.
Right.
I think it's just for us visually to be able to see what's happening for her.
Right.
And especially when she's flying in space, she has to glow so that she can burn through an atmosphere and then stay alive in outer space.
Yeah, I get the practical reason for it. I just feel like that's the weakest element CGI wise, and that needs improvement overall in these films, to make it work. So let's we're gonna wrap this up. So we're gonna go through a couple more topics right here. Where do you think Captain Marvel fits in the MCU? We're gonna have an episode in the future leading up into Endgame, but just initial thoughts on where she fits.
I'm worried because she's practically invincible, so I don't know where she fits, and that's.
So I think with Captain Marvel, I mean, we're gonna have the discussion, and we did off air. I do like the kind of invincible aspect of her. Same thing with Thor and Thor Ragnarok. I like that he just suddenly became super powerful, and also Infinity War. And Thanos, man, you kind of need those like big guns, and I'm really excited for that in Endgame and going forward. What they do with that, it's just an escalation.
So I think my concern is that she is so invincible. Like, I don't want her to be Superman. I don't want her to be the Marvel version of Superman, which I know is basically what Captain Marvel is. Because I like the idea that the Avengers have to work together as a team, because they all need each other to be able to compete together.
Right.
You can't do it alone.
Right. Well, I think, going forward into the next phase of MCU, when Thanos is defeated, so past Endgame, they're probably going to bring in even more powerful characters.
They
and
have
so
to, right?
Right, and so that's going to be your kind of check on Thor and Captain Marvel and whoever else is in that tier.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So use them to defeat Thanos, and then something bigger will happen.
And this is comics 101. Like, you introduce, some powerful character, then you have to have the villain match their power, and then a new character comes along and they supersede that, blah blah blah, and that's it's just escalation until it gets ridiculous. Yeah. Okay, that's comics for you.
All right,
let's briefly touch on the most important character in the film. The cat named Goose.
Goose the cat.
Goose the cat.
Goose the cat. Okay, I love Goose the cat. When we see Goose the cat in the trailers, I was like, this is the most ridiculous part. Like, why are we watching Samuel L. Jackson like cuddle with a cat? Like, that's ridiculous.
It's a very human thing to do.
Very human thing to do for Nick Fury.
Everyone has a soft side, man.
I'm sure. Apparently, it's cats for Nick Fury. However, my favorite part was when we find out the cat's name is Goose, because that's a reference to Top Gun, which is a 1980s Air Force, jet pilot Air Force movie, and that's where Captain Marvel's origins are from.
Right.
So she's on an air base. Her commanding officer has this cat named Goose.
Yeah. And I didn't even put that you mentioned that in the theaters. You were like, oh, this Goose, Top Gun. And I was like, oh, crap. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, really good reference there by Marvel. So I really like, again, to go back to what you said, the references in this film are fantastic overall. But let's talk briefly about the box office. Opening weekend, it was 153 opening weekend. That's domestic. So a really solid opening. And it's MCU, so we kind of expect numbers like that.
Everybody's going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if you don't want to see it, you're still going to go see it.
Right. And you should go and see it, not only because it's a good movie, but because it will tie into Endgame.
Yeah, you have to see it. It connects a lot of dots.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the projection they're talking about for worldwide box office gross by the end of its run is $1.1 billion.
Dang.
And again, I guess we're getting kind of jaded with the billion number because MCU films seem to do it all the time, and Star Wars, of course.
Yeah.
But that's still a massive number.
Yeah.
And it's really
crazy.
hard to reach.
Right.
So,
I will say that is hard to reach with a female lead.
That's true too.
Because
Wonder Woman did do it.
history of female lead movies have not exceeded that. So I'm amped. I'm excited for this because I want more female lead movies to be able to reach that level and get some notoriety for it. Right.
Again, Wonder Woman reached like 850, so that didn't even hit $1 billion. And I think it's actually a better film, but it's like it was the groundwork.
It set it off.
Yeah. So now it's like a train that can't stop. And
Wonder Woman 2 will do it.
That's true.
That's going to be crazy.
And that takes place in the 80s.
It does take place in the 80s. I can't wait. I cannot wait.
There's more references for everyone, so that's going to be great. Okay, so this was episode number 7, our Captain Marvel review. Stay tuned for episode 8 when we're actually going to review Shazam, the other Captain Marvel, although don't get upset that I said that. He's technically the original Captain Marvel, but that's going to be coming up in a couple weeks. We're going to see it early on March 23rd. They're doing early screening, so I encourage everyone to go and see it early as well. The initial reviews have actually been pretty positive, so
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I laugh every time I watch the trailer.
Yeah, the trailer looks
great. And so I'm not a trailer watcher. I will watch one of the trailers. I don't watch all 3 trailers and the teasers because I always feel like that gives away the movie.
Right.
So I usually stick to like the first trailer that comes out.
Yes, and I feel like the trailers for this have, again, Shazam, I'm talking about
Shazam.
here, has been solid because they have not given a lot away at all. It's a lot of the same stuff in each trailer, which is good. So we're going to do that review. In the meantime, follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, at the Porgcorner on all those platforms. And reach out to us. Let us know what you think about Captain Marvel if you've seen it. And if you have not seen it, what are you waiting on? Go see it. All right, guys.
Till next time.
Till next time.